the swirling mists of history, few lives blaze with the tragic elegance and fierce scandal of Dame Fanny Lucy Houston. Born amid the grey grit of London's underbelly, she was a dazzling bloom in the soot-stained streets of Lambeth. A poppy, unfurling against the drab, a bright spark that refused to fade. Armed with little but a defiant heart and boundless ambition, she climbed her way from squalor to the stage, captivating audiences and enrapturing a married man of wealth and renown. Their love affair was a tempest, a scandal that rippled through London's high society, a fire hot enough to sear its way into legend. 3 more marriages followed, where she rose to the height of English society but refused to bow to its rules. Poppy became a force of purpose, championing women's rights, fighting for the poor, and pouring her wealth into something radical. As Britain staggered in the aftermath of the Great War, her investments fueled the innovation of aircraft that would one day defend her country in its darkest hour, in the Battle of Britain. Poppy was a woman who dared to live unshackled by convention, her life a testament to courage and audacity. From the back streets of London to the gilded halls of Paris, Poppy remained defiant, ferocious, and free. This is the story of Poppy Houston, a woman whose passions saved lives, whose scandals rocked high society, and whose legacy remains etched into the fabric of Britain itself. If you enjoy stories like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. As a small creator, your support truly makes a difference. Now, let's dive into the scandalous life of Lady Houston, the forgotten socialite who saved Britain. In the soft shadows of a burgeoning London on April 8, 1857, within the modest confines of 13 Lower Kennington Green, a firebrand by the name of Fanny Lucy Radmall, later known as Poppy Houston, first drew breath. Lambeth, then a rough-edged enclave on the fringe of a sprawling metropolis, pulsed like a vital artery, whispering promises of grandeur to those with the audacity to dream. Born into a crowded household of 10, Poppy was raised by her father, Thomas, a humble woolen merchant, and her mother, Maria Isabella Clark, a woman of quiet but unshakable grace. Together, they nurtured a brood accustomed to both hardship and the fierce resilience of urban life. From her earliest years, Poppy's spirit shone like a spark in the dusty din of London. A child of endless curiosity and restless energy, she roamed Lambeth's streets, where the symphony of market cries and clattering carriage wheels filled her world. Her radiant presence and flair for wearing striking reds soon earned her the nickname Poppy, a name that matched her vibrant nature, a bright bloom against the city's drab grays. It was as though, even then, she was destined to stand out, a colorful force amid the everyday monotony. Soon, the West End called, and 16-year-old Poppy took on the role of a chorus girl, stepping into a world where illusion and reality danced together. Her debut was a baptism into an intoxicating realm of light and shadow, and the theater became her dominion. With striking beauty and magnetic presence, Poppy was quickly cast as its muse. In the flickering glow of gaslights, she commanded the stage, captivating London's elite who filled the gilded seats, entranced by her every move. Among those who fell under her spell was Frederick Gretton, a man of wealth and notoriety, twice her age, captivated by this young woman whose vitality shone like a beacon in the hazy glow of the footlights. He watched her from the crowd, entranced, soon to be drawn into her orbit, setting the stage for a scandalous chapter in Poppy's life. Gretton, a married brewer and father of 3, was utterly bewitched upon meeting her, and they began an affair sending shockwaves through London's high society. Gossip seeped from the drawing rooms and dining clubs into every whispered corner of polite society, scandalizing an elite unaccustomed to such open defiance of propriety. Gretton and Poppy decided to flee from London, where he left his wife and children behind, to seek refuge in Paris. In the City of Light, Poppy fully embraced her name and her freedom, weaving herself into the fabric of high society with all the allure and boldness that had captivated Gretton. The spice of forbidden love, seasoned by the heady thrill of their elopement, sharpened her charm and granted her entry into circles few could reach. She dined with archdukes, mingled with the bohemian elite, and even brushed shoulders with the Prince of Wales. She and Gretton, bound by a love that danced along the edge of scandal, waltzed beneath glittering chandeliers, and drank champagne in salons scented with the sweet, dangerous perfume of transgression. The racetrack became yet another stage for their lives, a theater of chance and thrill, where the stakes were high and the pulse quickened. Gretton, whose family fortune was tied to the prestigious brass brewery, shared with Poppy a fervor for horse racing. At Ascot and Epsom, they found a different kind of adrenaline, one that mirrored their own exhilarating, reckless love. The pounding hooves, the thundering crowds, the thrill of high stakes, all mirrored the restless excitement of his life with Poppy. But in 1882, the thrill of their shared existence came to an abrupt halt when death claimed Frederick. In his final gesture, he left Poppy an inheritance of £6,000 a year, equivalent to £500,000 today. The fortune, scandalous in its enormity, sent shockwaves through society. This legacy was more than a bequest. It was a golden key, unlocking the gates that had bound Poppy's ambitions. Suddenly, the chorus girl-turned-lover had become one of the wealthiest women in England, her social elevation as bold and provocative as the affair that had brought her to this point. High society recoiled and marveled in equal measure, aghast at the notion of this vivacious outsider with newfound wealth and influence. Gretton's family, caught between horror and fascination, looked on with bated breath, wondering how Poppy would wield her inheritance. For Poppy, the fortune was not merely a windfall. It was a declaration of independence, a chance to seize her destiny and shape it to her own daring vision. With the dust of past ambitions still clinging to her skirts, she returned to the world of theater, not as a wistful chorus girl, but with the audacious vision of a leading lady. The grand old Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, called her back, its footlights flickering with the promise of a new beginning, its stage thick with the ghostly echoes of plays long past. Here, in this hallowed hall, she encountered Theodore Francis Brinkman, a man sculpted from the lineage of old money and well-worn virtues, the son of Sir Theodore Brinkman, 2nd Baronet. In him, Poppy found not merely a partner, but a tempestuous force that swept her up, compelling her toward an elopement as passionate as it was reckless. On September 3, 1883, they married in a whirlwind of unbridled romance and boundless optimism, heedless of the future. But as the seasons shifted, so too did the texture of their union. The fierce, impulsive passion that had ignited their love began to cool, revealing beneath it the fragile foundations on which their marriage had been built. What had once been a thrilling romance dulled into a quiet, uncomfortable cohabitation, each season bringing with it further distancing. After a decade of drifting orbits, Poppy and Theodore parted ways in 1895. Their divorce was the final act of a play that had once promised a grand romance, but left little of true love to endure. The curtains closed with quiet finality, leaving Poppy free yet again to reinvent herself. Barely had the echo of that love faded when Poppy, her heart ever resilient, found herself ready to compose new verses in the familiar song of romance. This time, her affections were captured by Lieutenant George Frederick William Byron, the 9th Baron Byron, a man whose very name carried the weight and drama of English literary history. A distant cousin of the famed poet, Byron was a man of letters in his own right, though his writing was cloaked in the anonymity the times afforded him. His words were not poetic, but incisive, his commentary hidden behind pseudonyms as he examined the shifting currents of his age. Byron, as it turned out, had once been ensnared by a con woman, a debacle that left him in considerable debt and grasping for salvation. But in Poppy, he found both a lifeline and a partner in ambition. She proposed an arrangement. She would pay his debts, and in return, he would marry her, granting her both his name and his title. He accepted, bound as much by necessity as by love, and so began their unconventional union. As the years passed, Poppy's interests expanded beyond the theater and into the passionate realm of politics. She became an outspoken advocate for women's suffrage, pouring her energy and wealth into the cause. At the height of her fervor, she acquired an army of 615 parrots, although their origins remain a mystery. The birds, housed in red, white, and blue cages, became an eccentric symbol of her cause, trained to squawk votes for women. Poppy's wealth enabled her to bolster the suffragette movement in ways few others could. She gave generously to causes, interrupted government meetings, and stood bail for the indomitable Emmeline Pankhurst, solidifying her status as both benefactor and believer. With the name and rank of Lady Byron, society doors that had once been firmly closed now opened for her. The whispers of her elopements and romances were forgotten, replaced by respect and even admiration. She was invited to the coronation of George V in 1911, a mark of acceptance that would have been unimaginable in her early years. When the First World War descended, Poppy turned her patriotic fervor toward the troops, supporting the war effort with characteristic flair. She organized campaigns like A Match for Our Matchless Troops, sending boxes of matches overseas emblazoned with her name, and the Give Him Socks drive, ensuring soldiers' feet were warm on the front lines. Not content to stop there, she created the Bluebird's Nest, a rest home on Hampstead Heath, providing solace to nurses returning from the brutal fields of the Western Front. In 1917, when Lord Byron passed away, Poppy's contributions did not go unnoticed. King George appointed her as Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, honoring her for her unwavering support. Ever insightful, she foresaw the fragile peace that followed as only temporary, and began to urge the government to fortify British defenses. Staunchly patriotic, she could often be seen in London, walking briskly with a handbag filled with £5 notes, which she handed out to homeless soldiers with a strict admonition, mind you, don't spend it all on drink. Her third and final marriage was to Sir Robert Houston, 1st Baronet, a man whose reputation was as unyielding as the steel in the hulls of his ships. A member of Parliament and a formidable shipping magnate, Houston was described as a hard, ruthless, unpleasant bachelor. But where others saw a harsh recluse, Poppy saw a prize, and with characteristic determination, she pursued him for 7 relentless years. Until at last, on December 12, 1924, Poppy achieved her goal, marrying Sir Robert and assuming the title of Lady Houston. Sir Robert, ever pragmatic, established residence in St. Saviour, Jersey, primarily for tax purposes. They split their time between England, the windswept calm of Jersey, and his opulent yacht, the Liberty, where Poppy found herself adrift in luxury. Their marriage was marked by tension and Poppy's relentless, unfiltered ambitions. When Sir Robert revealed his will to her, proposing to leave her £1 million, a staggering sum in their day, she reportedly tore it up, deeming it inadequate and demanding more. By this time, Sir Robert had become desperately ill, plagued by depression and a haunting belief that he was being poisoned. His days on the Liberty grew darker and more solitary, culminating in his death aboard the yacht on April 14, 1926, leaving Poppy a widow yet again, this time one of immense wealth. Inheriting approximately £5.5 million, worth roughly £376 million today, Lady Houston had ascended to the rank of England's second richest woman. From 1926 onward, Lady Houston's life veered into a fascinating paradox. Outwardly, she maintained a facade of modesty, but beneath that veneer, she channeled vast portions of her fortune into causes and crusades that seized her ever-shifting passions. Her most extravagant gift came in the form of £11.5 million to Winston Churchill, a gesture she explained with characteristic whimsy, saying simply, "Because I liked him." Yet her generosity had limits. Driven by a fervent distrust of socialism, she established an information bureau to expose and undermine socialist politicians, branding certain Labour MPs as unpatriotic threats to the empire she adored. By 1928, Lady Houston had set her sights on the publishing world. She began by backing Boswell Printing and Publishing on Essex Street, a stronghold for right-wing thought. Through this platform, she released a series of anonymous potted biographies, satirical critiques of left-wing figures presented under the guise of objective profiles. These pamphlets were a warm-up for her next acquisition, the Saturday Review. Under her influence, the magazine became a mouthpiece for her increasingly extreme views, reflecting her deepening sympathy for the authoritarian leaders rising across Europe. Yet many readers regarded her editorial shifts as ludicrous, unable to take seriously the eccentric widow who seemed to wield her pen with the flourish of a fencer and the fervor of a zealot. In her frustration with the government's neglect of Britain's air defense, Lady Houston took matters into her own hands. Undeterred by official rebuffs, she turned her attention to the Schneider Trophy, an international contest that spurred innovation in aviation by encouraging designs that pushed the boundaries of speed and aerodynamics. The government, led by her long-standing adversary, Ramsay MacDonald, saw no practical value in funding Britain's participation during an economic downturn and dismissed the competition as a frivolous expense. But Poppy, ever the patriot, disagreed. She offered an astounding £100,000 to cover Britain's costs for the Schneider Trophy, a sum the government could not ignore. With mounting public support for her cause, and MacDonald keen to keep her tenacious influence at bay, her donation was reluctantly accepted and directed to the Royal Aero Club. The funds paved the way for Rolls-Royce to develop a powerful new engine, ultimately creating the Supermarine S6 aircraft. The Supermarine S6 clinched victory, a triumph that rippled far beyond the accolades of the race itself. The innovations achieved during the contest became the foundation for a new generation of British aircraft. The engineering knowledge gleaned, particularly in engine power and speed, directly informed the design of the legendary Spitfire, a plane that would become central to Britain's air defense in World War II. Without Lady Houston's unwavering commitment and financial backing, it is doubtful whether the Spitfire, at least in its formidable final form, would have existed. Sir Arthur Sidgreaves, managing director of Rolls-Royce, later acknowledged, "It is not too much to say that research for the Schneider Trophy contest over the past 2 years is what our aero engine department would otherwise have taken 6 to 10 years to learn." When World War II began, Britain's planes were only just able to match the Luftwaffe's, thanks to innovations that began with the Schneider Trophy. Had Poppy not provided the funds for Britain's entry in 1931, the Battle of Britain could have played out very differently. Lady Houston's eccentricities only grew with age, becoming the stuff of legend. She delighted in betting on horses and would distribute her winnings among her staff and servants, with the same lavish flair that marked everything she did. Convinced that fresh air was essential for health, she insisted that all the windows in her home remain open year-round, regardless of the season. Believing that exposure to the elements was equally vital, she was often seen strolling through her garden and even her neighborhood entirely unclothed, a sight that startled and amused the locals well into her late 70s. Despite her flamboyant lifestyle, Poppy rarely sought recognition for her charitable work. During the Great Depression, she noticed the plight of unemployed herring fishermen and quietly donated significant sums to help sustain them, embodying a compassion that ran deeper than her public image suggested. As war loomed, Poppy's patriotism grew fiercer. She sent a £200,000 check to the British government to fund fighter planes, but officials, favoring bombers over fighters, dismissed her contribution. When the national government rejected her donation, she responded with fierce indignation, publicly accusing them of recklessly neglecting the nation's security. Refusing to be dismissed, she sailed the Liberty around Britain, its rigging aglow with electric signs bearing bold slogans like "Down with MacDonald the traitor," a pointed rebuke to Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald, whom she viewed as dangerously complacent on matters of defense. Yet in her fervor for Britain, she also made some controversial choices. In 1935, she wrote a letter to Hitler, suggesting an alliance with Britain to crush Russia. At the time, unaware of Hitler's dark intentions, Poppy viewed him simply as a bulwark against communism, which she regarded as Britain's greatest threat. In her final years, Poppy poured her energy and resources into defending her country. Within the Royal Air Force, Lady Houston is still remembered as the fairy godmother of the RAF, or more potently, as the woman who won the war. Her legacy is a blend of the eccentric and the essential, a testament to one woman's unwavering dedication to her country. But Poppy Houston never knew the legacy she would leave. She never knew of her silent, invisible role in Britain's victory over the Nazis, nor the gratitude of a nation she would never live to see. By 1936, her health was fading, and she slipped from bouts of despair to paranoia. She became convinced that England was crumbling, her beloved empire on the brink of another catastrophe. With that dark certainty, she made a fateful decision. She would stop eating. She let her body waste as if she could not bear to watch the world waste with it. As the year ended and the weather grew cold, she kept her windows flung open to the winter wind, the biting cold rushing through her rooms, as if to cleanse her spirit in one final, bracing gust of fresh air. When her staff called in a doctor, Poppy dismissed his counsel, resigned instead to her fate. Left in the care of a nurse who urged her to rest, she offered her final words with a wry smile. "Yes, my dear, and a damned long rest it's going to be." Lady Houston passed away on December 29th, 1936. In those last years, she was still regarded as one of the country's richest women, one of its most patriotic, and one of its most eccentric. Her death, much like her life, shocked and bewildered the nation. It was as though she had simply willed herself to vanish, a final act of defiance against a world she could no longer steer. And yet, without her, how different might the world look? How dim, how diminished, how desperately defenseless in its darkest hour. In an era of timorous leaders and trembling governments, she alone stepped forward, unshakable, relentless, possessed by a patriot's fire that no counsel could quench and no whisper of propriety could silence. Poppy Houston burned like a comet through the ordered skies of her day, defying the gravity of convention and igniting the heavens with her singular vision. She was not a woman bound by earthly constraints or hemmed in by timid ideals. She was a force, raw and reckless, as mercurial as the sea and as steadfast as the stars. Beneath the quiet green of St. Marylebone Cemetery, her headstone stands with stark simplicity, one of England's greatest patriots. And indeed she was. An adventurer, a storm incarnate, a woman who wielded her life as a blade against mediocrity and apathy. Lady Houston was a paradox, a patriot forged of steel and fire, who lived without apology, defying the conventions that sought to contain her. Her name does not belong buried in the forgotten footnotes of history. It deserves to blaze forth, fierce and unbridled, as a testament to courage, vision, and the indomitable force of a spirit that would not yield. No grand monument marks her legacy. Her name does not echo through the pages of school books, and beyond the circles of the Royal Air Force, her memory has slipped into obscurity. Yet her impact endures in silence, woven into the lives of those she helped save, etched into the triumph of a war she helped win. For this, she deserves to be remembered, not merely as a name on a headstone, but as a force that shaped history, an invisible monument of bravery, boldness, and the relentless pursuit of a dream. Thank you for joining me for this week's deep dive into the life of Poppy Houston. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if there's a remarkable woman you'd like to see in future episodes, let me know. Your likes, shares, and comments mean the world to us. They keep this channel going and help us continue to bring these powerful stories to light. We now have over 60 women's biographies on the channel, so feel free to explore and let me know your favorites. A heartfelt thank you to our patrons: Velocity Girl, ZenLife68, Jillian Barker, Junie Moon, Philip Gallegos, Kingsley Clark, Copham Chung, Harry Thurston, Karen Craig, Second Soprano 150, Michelle Lynn Neal, Deborah Himes, Bavia Andrea, Tracy Walsh, Elizabeth, CTS Bathory, America Marie, and Joy McGuire. Your support truly makes this possible. And a special shout out to this week's trivia winner, Bonkers. Congratulations. And to everyone watching and sharing our passion for history, thank you. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and as always, thank you for watching.